The wind never stopped on Mocker 9. Not the natural kind of wind either, no, this was industrial air, sucked in by machines buried deep under the moon's crust and spat back into the atmosphere through giant exhaust towers. It howled like a restless ghost, kicking up dust made of iron filings and powdered rust. The miners wore visors and masks, even for short walks between modules. It was better than coughing blood. Nadir Samuels didn't wear much protection. He liked to feel the place on his skin. Liked to taste the metal when he breathed. After 8 years running a food truck at the edge of mining colony E5, he'd learned the weather didn't care about him. So he'd stopped caring back. His truck, the Meteor Grill, wasn't much to look at. Patched plating, faded decals, engine rumbles that sounded like a tired sigh. But the inside? Polished, organized, warm. It was the only soft place for 5 kilometers. The only heat that didn't come from a drill core. He opened up every day at 17:45 local. The miners finished their shift at 1800 hours. Punctuality was sacred. And so was food. The menu never changed. Protein buns, synth ribs, pickled veg, flatbreads, and the only real chili oil this side of the Andos belt. Nadir didn't cook fancy. He cooked like memory. Like comfort. Like he was trying to remind people they were still human beneath all the grit. The first 10 miners in line always ordered the same thing. They nodded. He nodded. No small talk. Just the transaction. Then, on day 722, she showed up. Not from the tunnels. Not wearing a uniform. Not even walking like someone used to mock her gravity. She stepped lightly, like she didn't belong to the ground. Her boots were dark blue leather. Real leather. Her jacket shimmered when it caught the industrial lights. Copper hair fell over one eye, and mirrored lenses hid the rest of her face. Nadir didn't say anything. Just watched. She waited until the line cleared. Then she stepped forward, smooth as a closing door. Grilled synth ribs, she said. And flatbread. Extra chili. He blinked. Extra. Her lips curled. Not quite a smile. Not quite not. Don't worry. I can handle it. He didn't ask questions. Made the plate, slid it across. She nodded once, paid in hard credits, no chip, no scan. Then she sat down on the low crate near the fuel vent. Not where customers usually Saturday, too close to the heat. Too far from the lights. But she didn't seem to mind. Didn't even flinch when the thermal fans kicked on. He watched from the window as she ate. Slowly. Methodically. Like someone remembering how to enjoy food after too long away from it. The miners watched her too, from the corner of their tired eyes. But she didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. She came back the next day. Same time. Same order. Same quiet. And the next. And the next. 4 days passed. The first time Cora Zill saw Ian March, he was arguing with a vending machine. Not violently. Not even loudly. Just standing there, palms open, quietly saying, "I asked for tea, not electrolyte sludge." The machine didn't respond. Cora didn't mean to laugh, but she did. Soft, amused, tired. He turned his head just slightly and said, "You must be the chef. And you must be the only human here who hasn't been bribed into loving thermoplastic noodles," she replied. His mouth twitched. Close enough to a smile to count. Halcyon 7 wasn't a planet. It was a station. Orbiting a gas giant too thick to mine and too beautiful to ignore. The diplomatic corps used the station for interstellar hospitality and soft influence, which meant dinners, taste demonstrations, cultural etiquette exchanges. And her. Cora Zill, chef, culinary diplomat, one-time student of the legendary Kelthvern and now the most overqualified appetizer server in 5 systems. This was her 3rd stop on the tour. A month on each station. 1 meal a day, shared across species. Taste as translation. Flavor as bridge. They'd sent her everything, the files, the BIOS, the local reports. But no one mentioned Ian March. He wasn't stationed here. Wasn't assigned. He was just here. And no one told her why. Their first conversation over a real meal happened 3 nights later. She was prepping a meal for a small group of Liran dignitaries, slender beings with feathered faces and strict textural preferences, when he wandered in. "You're not cleared for the kitchen," she said without looking up. "I'm not," he replied. "But the smell was interesting." "That's Lemrut. It's illegal on most trade worlds. Don't touch." "Wasn't going to." "You're not one of them, are you?" she asked, turning toward him now. "Who?" "The ones who eat for calories. For fuel. The kind who forget food is a language." He shrugged. "I don't eat much at all." She arched a brow. "Why not?" "Most of it doesn't taste like anything anymore." That made her pause. She stepped back, wiped her hands, looked him over. Lean build. Tired eyes. An accent that didn't belong to any one system. "Let me guess," she said. "Former linguist, memory recall specialty, something happened on a mission that burned out your emotional taste receptors." He blinked. "That's almost exactly right." "I cook better than I guess," she said. "Pull up a stool." He didn't eat the first dish she made for him. Didn't say why. Just stared at it for a long moment. Like it reminded him of something painful. But the second time, he took a bite. Closed his eyes. And didn't speak for a full minute. "It tastes like rain," he whispered. She nodded. "Memory mapping. I use sensory notes from emotional lexicons. Built the dish from the way sad songs taste." "Why?" "Because some people forget how to remember." He looked at her then, not with suspicion, but with something like grief. "And you?" She hesitated. "Then, I used to forget. Now I cook." Over the next week, he became her shadow. Always arriving when the kitchen was warmest. Always asking questions. Not intrusive, curious. Hungry, in a way that had nothing to do with food. He asked about spices from her homeworld, about pressure cooking on different gravities, about how she calibrated taste across species with incompatible palates. But never about her past. Never about the tattoo hidden on the inside of her wrist, the one she never spoke of. And she didn't ask about his, either. Until the day she found him in the old storage wing, holding a broken cooking medallion and staring at the wall like it had spoken to him. "That belonged to the original station cook," he said when she approached. 50 years ago. She died during a supply riot. The medallion was all they kept. "You remember her?" He nodded. "You worked here?" "No, my mother did." And just like that, he unraveled. Quietly. Delicately. Like a thread pulled loose from a woven cloth. She learned. He was born on a drift station, learned a dozen languages before the age of 10, joined the translation corps at 16. Brilliant. Obsessive. Emotionally fragile. And then he translated a dying alien's final speech. Not words. Memories. And something inside him had broken. "Ever since," he said, voice barely audible, "everything tastes like nothing." Until now, he didn't say. But she saw it in his face when he ate her food. She saw it in the way he lingered. One night, during a lull in station power, they sat on the floor beside a cold stove, eating cold dumplings and trading ghost stories from their pasts. She told him about the time she'd cooked during a blockade, sneaking hot meals past a warlord with nothing but salt packets and bluffing. He told her about a language spoken only in breath sounds, now extinct because the only speakers had refused to leave a collapsing moon. They didn't touch. But they didn't need to. Connection was already happening. Slow. Steady. Inevitable. 2 days later, the dignitaries requested a shared dish, something neither human nor Liran. A blend. Cora hesitated. Fusion was delicate. Forced fusion was dangerous. But she had an idea. "I'll need a translator," she told the council. "You already have one," came Ian's voice from the doorway. He helped her navigate the texture syntax of Liran dining codes. Helped her balance their spice logic with her own flavor profiles. The result? A dish with layers like conversation. It crackled. Sang. Soothed. The dignitaries cried. Ian didn't. But after they left, he turned to her, expression unreadable. "I tasted it." Her breath caught. "And?" "It reminded me of the first time someone held my hand." Cora said nothing. Just reached across the prep table. And took his hand. He didn't pull away. They didn't fall in love the way poets write. No declarations. No violins. Just long silences that meant something. Just shared meals that said more than words ever could. One night, she found him standing in the viewing deck, watching the gas giant swirl. He turned when she entered. "I remembered something," he said. "Tell me." "My mother used to sing while she cooked. Always the same song. I forgot the words." He paused. "But tonight, I remembered the smell." She stepped closer. "And? It smelled like your stew." They stood there for a long time. Not touching. But close enough to count. A week before she was due to leave the station, he came to the kitchen carrying a thin, worn notebook. "It's old dialect," he said. "No one's translated it fully." She opened the pages. Recipes. But not just food. Ceremonies. Ritual meals. Love letters disguised as instructions. "I want you to cook one," he said. She looked up. And saw the question in his eyes. "Do you feel it too?" She nodded. And answered with a whisper. "Yes." The last night, she served the ritual dish to no audience. Just the two of them. In the kitchen. After hours. He took one bite. And finally. He cried. Quietly. Completely. Not in grief. But in release. She held him. And felt herself soften, too. "Come with me," she said the next morning. He looked at her, surprised. Hopeful. Afraid. "I don't have a place out there," he said. "Then we'll make one," she replied. "One dish at a time." Vin Rail didn't believe in gravity anymore. Not the kind you measured, anyway. He'd flown every class of fighter in the orbital fleet before his crash. Now the only pull he felt was artificial, low-grade, station-regulated, barely enough to keep the soup in its bowl. He ran a floating diner now. The Parallax. 6 booths. 1 rusting espresso unit. Windows that looked out over the slow, dying orbit of a red dwarf. The regulars were engineers, station drifters, and the occasional off-worlder who didn't care about ratings. They came for the quiet. They stayed for the soup. Vin made it different every day. Not on purpose. He just couldn't remember the old recipe right. But no one complained. No one ever had, since the accident. No one except the woman who showed up during the gravity glitch. He remembered the exact time, 14:08 station clock, local Euro disabled. She drifted through the doors in a soft pressure suit, clipboard tethered to her wrist, hair floating in coils like seaweed in water. You've in rail? She asked, voice like honey over old radio static. He blinked. Depends who's asking. Dr. Soji Kellam, she said, gripping the wall rail and adjusting her balance with practiced grace. I'm here to study emotional resonance in taste perception under artificial gravity. He stared at her. She stared back. Also, she added, I'm hungry. He served her soup in a magnetic bowl and anchored her tray to the counter with a manual latch. She sniffed. Frowned. You didn't use turmeric root. I don't use anything I can't pronounce, Vin muttered. She tasted it anyway. Slow. Deliberate. Then she smiled. Really smiled. Like it caught her by surprise. You remember this flavor, she said quietly. Can't remember my flight call sign, but sure, he said, eyes half-lidded. I mean emotionally. The spice blend triggers a layered memory reaction. Something you associate with safety. Probably from early childhood. Vin scoffed. Lady, I've crashed 3 ships and lost half a lung. If soup makes me emotional, it's probably just the acid reflux. She smiled again. Didn't believe him. And for some reason, he didn't mind. She came back the next day. And the next. Always with a new hypothesis, a new flavor request, a new theory about neuroreceptors and memory retrieval pathways. She wore her research like armor, but Vin could see through it. She wasn't there for science. Not entirely. Sometimes she didn't even eat. Just sat across from him while he stirred whatever passed for stew that day, talking about the way different gravity fields altered serotonin release during digestion. She asked questions that made his head ache and smiled at his sarcastic answers like they were test results. You're not from around here, he said one evening. She nodded. Born on Eden, B4. Gravity stronger. Bones denser. Made off-world school, complicated. Why come here? Because people eat differently in low-G, slower. More mindful. Their memories take longer to rise, but they rise stronger. He watched her then. How she spoke softly but never hesitated. How her fingers trembled only when she thought he wasn't looking. And you? She asked, sipping gently. Why stay here? He shrugged. Because no one else did. And that was the end of that, for now. One night, during a power storm, the station's grav system faltered completely. Utensils floated. Tables tipped. The soup slipped off the counter and hung there like a golden cloud. Vin grabbed the stabilizers. Soji didn't panic. She just drifted gently toward the wall, anchored herself, and grinned. Perfect test conditions. You're insane, he muttered, batting broth out of the air. No, I'm curious. You know, in some zero-G cultures, food is shaped entirely by emotion. No spices, no heat. Just texture and association. He threw her a pouch of dried fruit. Tell that to my chili. She caught it. Skillfully. Then asked, do you remember the crash? He stiffened. She didn't flinch. Just waited. Finally, he said, I remember the quiet after. How nothing moved. Not even blood. Not even pain. Just this, silence. Like space was listening. Her voice softened. That's when your memories became untethered. That's why you cook by feel, not by recipe. He looked up at her. I think, she added, you're still floating through that silence. For a while, she didn't come back. Vin tried not to notice. Tried not to care. But the soup tasted off every day she didn't sit across from him. Customers noticed. Didn't complain. But noticed. Then, 5 days later, she reappeared. Dark rings under her eyes. No clipboard. Just a question, can you make it taste like a goodbye? He didn't answer. Just turned the stove on. The meal was strange. Sour and warm and oddly floral. She ate it in silence. And when she set the spoon down, her eyes were full. "That's it," she whispered. "What is?" "That's what it tasted like. The day I left Eden, before. The last real meal with my mother." Vin leaned forward. Elbows on counter. "You got the data you wanted?" "I got more than that." Pause. "I felt something." Another pause. "You know what's funny," she said. "I came to study how food affects memory. But I think what I've really been chasing is someone who knows how to cook sadness." He blinked. Then, very carefully, said, "I'm better with regret." She smiled. "Close enough." She stayed longer after that. Moved her lab equipment into the booth by the window. Called it, field immersion. They cooked together sometimes. He taught her how to balance flavor with silence. She taught him how to measure emotion in a spoonful. They never said the word love. But they didn't need to. One day, she brought a gravity regulator. Small. Personal. Stable. "I'm not going back," she said. Vin didn't reply. "I want to learn what soup tastes like when you stop floating." He looked at her. Took her hand. And said, "Then let's land." Gem Nyla made desserts the government had outlawed. Not just sugar, joy. Whipped cream that sang like lullabies. Tarts laced with citrus bright enough to make a man cry. Ganache that made your heart ache the way old songs did. In Quadrant 3 of the Ulthar cluster, anything indulgent was banned. Sweetness dulled obedience. Spice fueled rebellion. They had claimed pleasure was a virus. Gem just called it life. She operated out of an abandoned shipping pod refitted with convection units, false floors, and a security grid she'd stolen from a dismantled orbital prison. "A good soufflé is more subversive than a gun," she once told her sister. Her sister was gone now. And Gem cooked like vengeance. Her customers whispered code at the door, "I need something warm," or "got anything that reminds me of summer." They paid in memory chips, trade secrets, sometimes tears. Each one took their slice of sweetness and returned to a world where nothing melted, nothing softened, nothing dared taste like happiness. She never asked names. Never gave hers. But she remembered every reaction. Especially the ones who cried after the first bite. One night, a man knocked without saying anything. He wore the standard enforcer coat, long, storm gray, pulse sensor stitched to the sleeve. Rank insignia woven at the collar. Gem's pulse spiked. He said nothing. Just pulled out a coin, an old metal one, scratched and warm, and placed it gently on the counter. "We're closed," she lied. "You weren't a second ago." He looked at her with eyes the color of smoke over dying fire. Calm. Steady. Like nothing could move him. "You know what this place is," she said carefully. He nodded. "I do." "Then you should arrest me." "Should," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "But you haven't." "Not yet." "Why?" He tilted his head. "Because it smells like vanilla." Gem stared. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wrapped object. Placed it beside the coin. "What is it?" "Last thing I remember tasting before they burned the flavor records." She opened the wrap. A tiny sugar crystal. Fractured. Barely preserved. "You kept this?" "Hid it for 20 years. Why bring it to me?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Because I heard you remember how to make joy." She didn't trust him. But she fed him. A creme brulee. Fire-kissed. Cracked on top. Soft underneath. He ate it in silence. And for a moment, she thought he was broken. Just still. Then he closed his eyes. And whispered, "This is what my mother sounded like when she laughed." She didn't speak. Didn't need to. He left after that. No cuffs. No orders. Just a single word, Danik. He came back 2 nights later. Then again. He never wore the coat after the 3rd visit. "Aren't you scared?" she asked once, kneading chocolate into rolled sheets. "Every second," he replied. "Then why keep coming?" "Because this," he held up a half-melted sugar petal, "is the only thing that still feels real." She understood. Her whole life had been made of half-melted things. One night, a raid swept the outer sectors. Her nearest supplier was burned alive in his oven. Danik didn't show up that night. Jem didn't sleep. When he did appear, bloodied, limping, eyes hollow, she let him inside without a word. He collapsed at the prep table. "They found my record," he muttered. "You're compromised." "I was always compromised." She cleaned his wounds. Sugar burned on the stove behind them. They didn't talk about love. They just let it happen. The next day, a warrant was posted. Wanted, Jem Nyla, Class 4 emotional trafficker. Accomplice, former enforcer Danik Quell, fugitive. Their faces were everywhere. So she did the only thing that made sense. She made a cake. Tall. Layered. Filled with spice and memory and smoke. And together, they cut it. Shared it. Then set fire to the pod and vanished into the vent system like sugar into steam. They opened shop a month later, 3 systems over. New names. New faces. Same desserts. A sign over the door read, "Joy is not illegal here." And underneath, in handwriting only Danik recognized.